Hey there, mystery lovers. Welcome back to MsStoryMystery. If you're new here, I share eerie and downright unexplainable encounters from real people, stories that make you question what's lurking in the shadows. Tonight's episode, it's packed with the kind of stories that stay with you long after the lights go out. We've got a childhood imaginary friend who might not have been so imaginary, a silent figure lurking in the dark, footsteps where no one should be, and a light that followed too closely. So, grab a blanket, maybe keep a light on, and let's get into it. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened in our old Chicago apartment when I was around 10 years old. My sister was 7 at the time. We both had wild imaginations, but she always took it a step further. We didn't always get along. We were typical siblings, constantly bickering over little things. So when she told me she had made a new friend, I didn't think much of it. Until she told me this friend's name was Samantha and that she lived across the street. I knew she was lying. For one, we were almost always together. And for another, our parents never let us play outside the fenced yard. There was no way she had met this supposed friend, unless she was from school, which she wasn't. But my sister stuck to her story. She'd talk about Samantha constantly, how they played all day, told jokes, had fun together. It annoyed me. I told her she was lying, that she didn't have any friends. I was kind of a bully older sister. I just didn't believe in the whole imaginary friend thing. When I tried to tell my mom, she just laughed it off, saying my sister was probably just messing with me. One day when we were playing together in our shared bedroom, I decided to call her bluff. "Why doesn't Samantha come play with us?" I asked. "She can't today," my sister said. I laughed. "That's because she's not real." She gave me a sharp look. "Yes, she is." "No, she's not." She was quiet for a moment. Then, with a strange calmness, she said, "If you keep talking bad about her, something will happen." I just laughed harder. That's when her face changed. She looked at me with pure, seething anger, a look I had never seen from her before. And then she said, "Samantha says she's going to get you." I froze. The way she said it wasn't playful, it wasn't teasing, it was final. I bolted out of the room and ran to my mom, crying, telling her my sister was scaring me. My mom scolded her, told us to behave, but something about the way she said it stuck with me. That's when things started happening. I had a Toy Story Jessie doll that sat on my windowsill with my other dolls. One night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at that doll. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, its head turned to look at me. I squeezed my eyes shut, rubbed them, blinked hard. When I looked again, the doll was facing forward, just like before. A chill ran down my spine. The next day, I was alone in our room watching a movie. I like to lay on my stomach and play with my feet, knocking them against the edge of the bed frame. That's when I felt it. A touch. A cold, deliberate fingertip dragging from the top of my heel down to my toes. I didn't turn around. I didn't look. I just ran. I ran straight to my mom, sobbing, telling her it was Samantha. She didn't believe me. "Quit playing around," she said. I begged her, pleaded, but she brushed it off. After that, nothing happened for a week. No whispering in the dark, no strange touches, no shifting dolls. Then one day, my sister and I were playing Barbies. She suddenly burst into laughter. I looked at her. What's so funny? Still giggling, she said, Samantha got you, huh? My blood ran cold. To this day, she swears up and down that she doesn't remember any of it. She has no idea who Samantha is. But I do. I always will. I had a strange encounter last night. It was past midnight when I took my dog out to pee. I know it's late for a woman to be outside alone, but sometimes I think my dog gives me a false sense of security. Usually, even this late, there are one or two other dog owners out. But tonight, the courtyard was empty. Just me and my dog. We were in that open space between multiple buildings, and as my dog sniffed around for a spot, I noticed a man walking through the pathway near one of the buildings to my left. I looked at him, maybe a little too hard. I have a habit of staring without realizing it, especially when I'm tired. Sometimes I just zone out, and maybe that's what happened, because he noticed me looking. And then he started stalling. He kept glancing behind him, hesitating, taking a few steps forward, then stepping back, looking down, then back again. It was like he was waiting for something. My first thought, maybe he had an off-leash dog lagging behind. But I couldn't see anything, just the bushes lining the pathway. Then he looked at my dog. Not a casual glance, a stare. At that exact moment, a security guard in a bright yellow jacket walked by on the other side of me. The man in the tracksuit suddenly walked away. No dog, just him. And for some reason, I didn't register it as a threat. Not yet. A small part of me even wondered, did I scare him? Did I make him uncomfortable by staring? My dog finished up quickly and I started heading home. But as I turned the corner, I saw him again. He had moved to another building. He was standing near the back door, partially hidden behind a pillar, watching me. Still silent. His body didn't move, only his head turned just enough to track me. A narrow road separated us. The street was empty, no people, no cars. I didn't stop, I didn't speed up. Instead, I just changed course, crossing to the other side of the street, keeping as much distance as possible. But as I moved, I checked over my shoulder, half expecting him to start moving toward me. But he didn't. He was still standing there, still watching. The moment I turned onto my street, I rushed inside and locked the door behind me. We never exchanged words. He never made a gesture. Nothing. He didn't look homeless. His black tracksuit looked brand new. He didn't seem obviously unstable. And yet, something about the way he lingered, the way he watched, it felt off. I don't know if I can report something like this. He didn't do anything. But I can't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. And I can't stop wondering, what would have happened if I had stayed out just a little longer? I grew up in a house that never felt right. From the time I was 4 until I was 14, that place carried a heavy, negative energy, one that seemed to press down on you the moment you stepped inside. Even as a kid, I wasn't the only one who noticed. Family and friends who visited would sometimes mention it, saying the house felt off, like something was watching. Some even refused to stay overnight, saying it gave them the creeps. I didn't blame them. For me, The worst areas were upstairs. My bedroom, the game room, and the bathroom all had this thick, suffocating presence. And downstairs, the laundry room, that place was the worst. The rest of the house felt okay enough, but those rooms, they felt wrong. I was terrified of sleeping in my room alone. Even when my mom stayed with me, I never felt safe. During the day, I tried to distract myself by playing with my toys, but eventually, that feeling of being watched would creep in, settling deep into my bones. It was as if something was lurking in the shadows, just waiting. Every time, my eyes would lock onto my closet door. No reason, just fear. One night, when I was about 6 or 7, I was in my room playing with my new birthday toys. I was excited. I had just gotten them and I was lost in my own little world. No one else was upstairs. Then my mom called me down for dinner. I ate quickly, eager to get back to playing, but when I went back upstairs and walked into my room, I froze. My toys weren't where I left them. Action figures that had been sitting were now standing, placed feet away from where they'd been. Toys that had been on shelves were now scattered on the floor. Almost everything had been moved. I ran to my sister. She was 2.5 years older than me and asked if she had messed with my stuff. She swore she hadn't even been upstairs. I couldn't explain it. After that, I refused to sleep in my room. Every night, I crawled into my parents' bed. It wasn't just a kid being stubborn. I was petrified. I was so scared of sleeping in there that I had a bedwetting problem until second or third grade. But one night, my mom managed to convince me to try again. I laid in bed, shaking. My whole body trembled with fear. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't even breathe properly. So I did what kids do. I hid under the covers. I stayed there for what felt like hours, sweating through my pajamas, struggling for air in the stifling heat of my duvet. But even under the blankets, I could feel something standing over me. It wasn't just in my head, it was there, looming in the dark, waiting for me to peek out. Eventually, the heat got too unbearable. I had no choice. I threw the covers off, gasping for air, and immediately scanned the room. My closet door, left cracked open, light on inside, felt like a gaping mouth waiting to swallow me whole. I burst into tears, jumped out of bed, and ran. I didn't stop until I was in the hallway, hugging myself, sobbing. It took years before I could handle sleeping in my room again. By fourth grade, I had sort of adjusted. One of the first nights I managed to sleep alone, I went to bed like normal, but woke up somewhere else. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my room. I was on the living room couch. It was dark. Only some moonlight slipped through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the floor. My body was turned toward the dining area, where I could see straight into the laundry room. At first, I was just confused. I wasn't tired. I wasn't groggy. I didn't remember moving. And then I saw it. A figure standing in the darkness of the laundry room. It wasn't human. Pale skin, large, empty black circles around the eyes, a sharp, downward pointed chin, long, stringy black hair. It stared at me, not moving, not blinking, just watching. I tried to convince myself it was something else, an illusion, a trick of the shadows, but there was nothing in that laundry room. No decorations, no artwork, nothing that could cast a shape like that. Just the washer, dryer, and cabinets. The longer I stared, the clearer it became. It wasn't going anywhere, and neither was I. I didn't move. I didn't even try to move. I barely breathed. It stayed there, silently watching me, until the sun came up and my parents' alarms went off. Only then did I finally move, stiff and slow, pressing my back against the wall as I crept to my parents' room, never turning my back on the laundry room. That morning, when I went upstairs, I noticed something strange. My blanket, the one I had gone to sleep with, was on the stairs. Not bunched up, not tossed aside, laid out in a long stretch from my bedroom to the bottom of the staircase, like it had fallen off my body as I sleepwalked down to the couch. I don't remember much after that. I don't know who I told or if I told anyone at all. But it happened again. Another night, I woke up on the couch, same as before, but this time my clothes were different. Some of them were gone, moved to strange places. They hadn't just fallen off naturally, they had been placed elsewhere, like someone or something had taken them off. I never had sleepwalking issues before or after those nights, and the experiences didn't stop. Toys in my closet would go off randomly, their sounds breaking the silence at night. The feeling of being watched never left. And then there was the shadow. One night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the sliver of hallway ceiling I could see from my bed, lit by the faint glow of a distant nightlight. And then I saw it. The shadow of a man. It was a clear side profile, unmoving, the top hat, the heavy brow, the strong chin. It reminded me of the Hat Man people talk about online. I watched it for hours, and then, just like that, it was gone. There were so many little things, too many to list. But the worst of it all, the thing I still remember most, was that thing in the laundry room. Even now, as an adult, I hesitate to talk about it. The way it looked feels too Hollywood, too much like something from a horror movie. But I know what I saw, and I know I wasn't the only one who felt something in that house. Years later, I talked to a family friend, someone sensitive to energy. She told me she had stayed the night once, sleeping in my bed, and she woke up to the whole bed shaking. Not violently, but just enough to wake her up, again and again, all night. I don't think about that house much anymore, but sometimes when I see movies like Insidious, I remember how I felt there, like I was exposed, like something was always watching, waiting. Early in my relationship, I frequently spent the night at my boyfriend's condo. He lived alone on the bottom floor, and his neighbor above him was a kind and usually quiet guy. I rarely noticed any noises coming from above. Almost the entire condo was hardwood flooring, except for the family room, which had carpet. My boyfriend worked a pipe fitting job and had a long commute, so he would usually leave for work around 4 a.m., sometimes even earlier. I'd stay in bed for a couple of hours after he left and head out around 7 or 8 depending on my work schedule. The first strange experience I had was just a dream, but an incredibly vivid one. It happened after my boyfriend had left for work and I had fallen back asleep. In the dream, I was walking through his condo, and as I passed by the bathroom, an old man suddenly emerged and started yelling at me, saying something was wrong with the water. He was short, round, bald, and completely unclothed. I turned to look in the tub, and the water was coming out a dark brown, almost black color. The old man kept yelling, telling me I needed to get out. I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured my mind was just being weird, especially since I knew the building had previously been an assisted living facility. A week or two later, things got even stranger. My boyfriend left for work as usual, but this time I had a hard time falling back asleep. After tossing and turning for about half an hour, I gave up and settled on scrolling through social media until it was time to leave. As I lay in bed, I suddenly heard what sounded like wet footsteps coming down the hallway. I could hear each individual step, each squish as it moved down the roughly 25-foot long hallway, stopping right outside the bedroom door. The sound was so distinct that I initially assumed my boyfriend had forgotten something or had been sent home early from work. I waited, expecting to hear the door open, but the footsteps never moved away. I stayed frozen in bed, my heart pounding. Ultimately, I chose to ignore it. I waited patiently for the sun to come up, then promptly got out of there without even making the bed. It was a freezing, snowy night, and my mom, sister, and I were out walking our dog. The cold was biting, so we decided to take a shortcut through a small neighborhood to get home faster. As we walked, I noticed an intensely bright light down another street. It was so blinding it looked like the high beams of a car, but something about it felt off. My sister saw it too, and we both thought it was strange. A minute later, we were almost out of the neighborhood when I glanced back, and my heart dropped. The light was right behind us. It was so bright I couldn't make out anything beyond it. It moved at an unnaturally slow pace, almost like it was floating. But there was no sound, no footsteps, no crunch of snow, nothing. I tried to get my mom and sister's attention, but they were focused on our dog and didn't notice right away. When my sister finally looked back, she froze. "It's following us," she whispered. My mom tried to brush it off, saying it was probably just someone on a bike. But then she saw it. The way it moved, too slow, too deliberate, and the sheer brightness of the light sent a chill through her. We didn't wait to find out what it was. We booked it out of the neighborhood, but the light kept following us. Then, suddenly, it stopped, right at the end of a pathway. It just stayed there like it was watching us. Once we were far enough away, I turned back hoping to get a better look. That's when I saw them. 2 girls walking their dog. They came around the corner, saw the light, and immediately turned the other way. Then, slowly, too slowly, the figure emerged from the pathway. It was tall, hunched, and pushing what looked like a cart with the blinding light attached to it. But here's what doesn't make sense. There was no sound, no footsteps, no wheels crunching over the icy ground, nothing. The figure never even looked in our direction, it just kept moving. After our walk, we had to run a quick errand. So we decided to drive back through the neighborhood to see if the figure was still there, but they were gone. Now we're all left feeling creeped out. Was it just a person? Maybe. But how did it get behind us so fast? It had been at the far end of another street, and within a minute it was right behind us, even though it was barely moving. A man pushing a cart shouldn't be able to move that fast, not without running, and yet, somehow, it did. And that, my friends, wraps up tonight's tales. From invisible touches to figures in the dark, some mysteries don't come with easy explanations, but that's why we're here to share them, to wonder, and maybe, just maybe, to make sense of the unknown. If you've got your own creepy experience, I'd love to hear it. Drop it in the comments or send it my way. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the scariest things are the ones we can't explain.